officials and just what his clubs have done to get more involved. So I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you all for being here today. Yeah, I gave me the, right before we're done, whoa! I thought that was coffee, sorry. That's the fastest, by the way, you'll ever see me. As Jacob said, I've had Joken since I was 20 years old, fell in love with them, and my wife and I breed championship ones. And so my background, I was I was a banker for 45 years. But also, I moved about 20 some odd years ago to a town called McAllister, Oklahoma, in 2004. And later on that year, a couple of years later, they recalled the entire city council and mayor. And at the time, I happened to have been the vice president of the the vice president of Chamber of Commerce, president of United Way, and got convinced I had to do that because they need help. And so, in addition to that, I had a father who his second career was in politics after his first career of the military. He then went into politics and was Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce for the state of Kansas. And so swore I'd never been into politics, but fell in love with the town, and it happens. So you guys are here because you understand the importance, obviously, of being involved with legislation. That's why you're here. The animal rights groups, those guys are active. And elected officials need our help. And I'm going to talk to you today about what we call LEOs, locally elected officials. The ones from your city, the ones from your county, the ones that live where you live, work where you work, and you have to deal with it. You got to remember that they need our help. Elected officials, quite frankly, are looking for solutions to their problems. And if the only solution that they hear is from animal rights people, then that's the only solution they're going to consider. They're not going to consider everything else. And animal rights things, frequently, the correlation and causality are 100% wrong. What do I mean by that? If we had an eclipse out there right now, and I took a drum outside, and I beat that drum, that eclipse is going to end. 100% of the time. I promise you, the correlation is perfect. But did the eclipse end because I beat the drum? No. The causality of what happened is completely wrong. Frequently, as our last demonstration with our projects that we did here about the mandatory spay and neuter, frequently what they're trying to solve is not what they're trying to solve, or what they're going to solve by their results. So, dog shelters are full. Great, let's stop purebred breeders from being able to have litters. Every purebred breeder I know, including me, has a contract that says if you can't keep your dog for the life of your dog, it comes back to me. The AKC can tell you statistics, but I think it's 7% or 3% of the dogs that are actually in shelters are purebred dogs. So, stopping purebred, well-bred breeders from breeding their breeds are not going to solve the overpopulation problem. My dogs are never going to end up in the shelter. If my dogs would ever have to come back, they would come back to us. But you have to remember that what are they frequently trying to solve and what are they really going to solve can be entirely opposite ends of the spectrum. So let's talk about locally elected officials, what I call LEOs. Who are they? They're your friends, they're your neighbors, they could be your co-workers. They've probably just been elected to their first public office. Quite frankly, some of them have probably just been elected to their last public office. Why? Because it's not near as much fun to be a locally elected official as you think it is. Believe me, mayor in McAllister, Oklahoma makes $75 a month and all the headaches you want. So you either have to be somebody who likes a little masochistic pain, or you just want to help out. But they're in public office, and this is probably their first public office. Typically, they're very well-meaning people. Somebody has to do the job. Our form of government requires people to get elected. That's how it's done. What's it take to get elected? You put your name on the ballot. Chances are you probably don't even have to pay a fee to put your name on the ballot. Somebody's got to do it. A lot of them run unopposed, and unlike our federal government, which you can be a senator for 50 years, have term limits. 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, so they're gonna change. And as Carol said, we just got them trained, and guess what? January rolls around and we got a new batch of people at the state that we have to turn around and educate. So, they changed a lot, and many of them didn't really have to do too much to get elected. So they haven't really thought about their positions on many, many things. Hopefully, they've been involved in the community before. Hopefully, they've served on the United Way or the Chamber of Commerce or some other local organization, or helped with the city, with the planning board, or one of the other 25 boards that most cities have to have. So that they at least have an understanding of how it works, how the alligator's arms reach around, and how everybody touches, and what city board does what, and those sorts of things. Hopefully, they didn't just decide to wake up one morning and say, you know, I'm going to run for county commissioner, I'm going to run for city council. Although that does happen. And realize that for your locally elected officials, virtually every city charter I've ever seen, every county charter I've ever seen, the requirements are simple. You got to be X number of years of age and probably have lived in that area for a long amount of time. Some of them do not require them to even be a registered voter. I mean, you could imagine some of the people that might run. And I can tell you some stories that I'm not going to say on camera so it doesn't get printed. But there is typically no education requirement and no experience requirement. But 98% of them are very well-meaning people. Somebody's got to do the job, so they want to be part of it. What's their reality? Number one, they have no idea what they're going to see every week. They just got elected to a local position. That position is probably at least a 2-year, probably not a 4-year position. They might have not liked a particular thing that was going on in the city, which is, by the way, a bad thing for most cities, because they're a one-issue person, and once they get there and figure out that they can't solve whatever that problem was, you're stuck with them for another 4 years. Give you a primary example. The street that my wife and I live on was horrible 20 years ago when I bought the house. And when I got elected mayor, I figured out I can't fix my street. Because if I do, people are going to say, oh, that's a piece of power. Can't do that. Okay, well, it didn't get fixed beforehand. Now I can't fix it when I'm mayor. What do? You just have to grin and bear it. But they typically have no idea what they're going to see every month. They typically don't know much about the problem. I know more about enhanced water coagulation purification systems for municipalities than I ever wanted to know in my life. Why? Because we had a water problem. And so we had to start from the very point where the water comes in from the lake, which, by the way, the sluice pipe was originally on the bottom of the lake instead of the middle of it, and then rebuild the pipes to the water plant, from the water plant to the water towers, clear out the water towers, and you learn more about some of that stuff than you ever wanted to know. But, unfortunately, Leos are frequently looking for the path of least resistance. And some will not do the homework. There was probably nothing more frustrating being a mayor than knowing that I had at least one councilman who, when you're at our city, you have a meeting twice a month. On Tuesday, the Friday before, the packet is delivered to your house, by the way, by a policeman. So, first time they show up to deliver something to your house, your spouse may think that you've had an accident. But in that packet will be the agenda. Each agenda item will have a one-page summary, and behind that summary will be all the detailed pages that tell all about that. There was nothing more frustrating than to realize I've got at least one person who hasn't even looked at the agenda before they showed up for the meeting, let alone ran the detail. So they'd read the one-page summary and then start asking questions that were on paragraph 2 of the detailed information right behind. And there's nothing you can do about that. Okay? You just have to recognize it is what it is and go on. But some will not do the homework to understand the problem, but they still get to vote. Their vote still counts as much as yours or as the mayor's or anybody else's. And if you remember nothing else, an empty city council chamber on the night of the meeting and no phone calls, tells that council, nobody cares about what's on the meeting. You can do whatever you want, because we used to look up, and all of a sudden we'd have a bunch of people in the meeting, it's like, what's everybody here for? Well, they all think this. And that was frequently the wrong thing, but we got through it pretty easily. But if you don't call, you don't talk to them, and you don't show up, that tells those locally elected people, nobody cares about what's on the agenda. And when you're trying to influence legislation, whether it's at the city level, the state level, the federal level, you gotta be on the front side. It doesn't do any good to moan about the fact that legislation got passed that you don't like after it's been passed. Because I promise you, the chances that you're going to get it passed or modified. Carol gave us a story earlier about how it passed and then they went and got it in one day and got the bill redone. That is a 0.0001 of the time that you can never have that.
One thing I just wanted to emphasize when she was talking about it, and I can't help myself now, is the reason they did that is they had built a foundation with all the folks who could do that.
Right.
So that, yes, they did it, but it took years to
Years
get to
of
that.
building that network. We call it networking. Why are you here? You're here to network with other people who have the same sorts of concerns and want the same sort of information you have.
It's still 0-0.
But it's still, that is the amazing thing. Your voice matters, but they need to hear your voice before they get to voting, before they get to changing amendments, before it goes from the House to the Senate, and then back to the House for reconciliation, those sort of things. What's our realities? They're simple. We love our dogs. We want the best for our dogs. We believe in our right to enjoy our canine members of our family. For an awful lot of people, those dogs are their family. They're not the dog. And many animal rights groups, by the way, they don't want you to own dogs. They're not for animal rights, they're for the elimination of our rights to own and enjoy those animals. So, there's an old adage in politics, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. So you have to be at that table, and you have to be at that table when they're serving dinner, not when they're collecting the plates at the end. So, what can you do now? Number one, sign up for the AKC alerts. It's very, very simple. They are doing a much better job this year than what they used to do. Those alerts now typically tell you not only here's the issue, but here's the talking points and here's contacts. Here's what you can do so that when you send them or them to your other dog people, they don't have to go look and research anywhere. Sorry about that. Every morning I get up, I got about 15 minutes worth of computer work. 5 minutes is doing some accounting for my daughter's business. The next 10 minutes I'm checking AKC alerts. I have for the Government Venture Club of America, I have every member broke down in a category of a group email by city. Something shows up in New York, AKC puts an alert out for New York. I forward that to them with a little message, and at least our New York people get it. Why do I do that? I can encourage people to sign up for AKC alerts. I don't know whether they do or not. And I will send them the alerts, and occasionally somebody will say, thanks, I really appreciate that. It's a very small way that I know that at least I've done what Teddy Roosevelt would say, and that's do what you can with what you've got right where you're at. It's a very simple thing, doesn't take me longer than, unless it was like yesterday morning where Connecticut had something and New York had something, and heaven forbid Georgia. I'm like, wow, they have some unique things that are coming out, almost as unique some days as what's coming out of California. But it's very simple. But be involved also at the local and state level. Your locally elected officials need to know who you are, and they need to know who you are before you need to ask them to do something. So, how do you do that? Your mayor probably has to appoint 50 people to different positions across the city. See what the different boards are. There's a tree board, there's a water resources board, there's a planning board, there's all sorts of business development board, there's an economic, find one you like that you're interested in. Meet your mayor, or whoever's appointing those, it's typically the mayor, ratified by the city council, and become involved. If they get to see you, they get to know you. If they get to know you, they get to respect you. Once they know you and respect you, guess what? When something comes up, they're gonna ask your opinion. Because they know you're the dog person. I mean, I've had several of our people in the city go, wow. They've met our dogs and go, oh, I heard you're great dogs. I go, wow. Well, if there's a dog thing, they'll call me. They'll let me know what's going on. Number two, know who they are. They change. Anybody see what happened yesterday with Secretary Christie Noem at the federal level? We had an unknown California senator, that nobody could ever remember his name, rush into a meeting. Okay, he, by the way, apparently got a meeting with her after it was done for almost 40 minutes to make sure that his questions were answered. But you're elected officials, you need to know them and you need to meet them before you need to ask them and give them advice on something. The only way that for them to see you as a resource is for them to know you. And they can't do that if you're sitting at your house all the time and not being involved in your city government. Be aware of what's happening at the local issues. We have seen a tremendous shift the last 2 months, or last 2 years, in issues that aren't getting done well at the federal level, aren't having a lot of success at the state level, so they're pushing them down to the county level. Why? Most animal shelters are ran by a county organization. I mean, I think, and this is just me, that sometime we need to work on being proactive with, there is a county organization that all 2,100 counties across the country work with. I think we need to be proactive with them to try and teach them a very simple lesson, and that is, we're not your problem. We can very well be a very great resource for you, but our dogs are not producing your problem. And most of them, that animal shelter is an interesting problem because they don't have the correct facilities. They don't have the correct people, and it's really just something they really don't want to deal with. But it's going to the grassroots level. AKC is great at federal, they're great at state. It's your particular town. Something shows up on your agenda, you need to call Jacob, you need to understand who your, by the way, your AKC government relations rep is, so that you can tell them, this is what's going on. And the chances that you see something at your level that they haven't already seen, you know, most of this animal rights stuff comes, and it's like ripples in a pond. They start in New York, Florida, Georgia, California, and then they ripple towards the Midwest. Chances that you're probably going to see something they haven't seen before, probably not good. So call them, let them know, use them as your resource. But unless you're aware of what's going on, unless you check your agendas, you have to be the eyes and ears.
And even going lower than that, you can sometimes see where something might start to get some traction is in your community, what's going on in your neighborhood groups.
Yes.
Exactly, exactly. And pay attention to your local groups. We have a great organization in the council called PAWS, the Pittsburgh County Animal Welfare System. And believe me, if those guys get fired up about an issue, regulators know it. The leaders know it, and they were like, okay, we've heard from y'all, we got it, we understand.
Not
what
even
you're
those,
doing.
but just the regular, like my town, my small little town in Alabama is Aniana. What's going on in Aniana, Alabama? Something in that starts
Churning.
and then you know something's gonna start, and then I go,
That's right.
okay.
That's right, the noise,
The
because
noise.
they're not gonna try and fix it unless it rises to the top. Get involved. Obviously, use your contact to go with it. Show up when something comes up. Remember, an empty city council chamber tells those guys, nobody cares about what's on that agenda. If that thing has some dog issue on it, it doesn't make any difference what it has on it. An empty chamber tells them it's not. That may not be true, by the way. They just may not know it. But that's what they are going to assume. Spread the word with other dog owners, not just your breed. I mean, yeah, I'm a Doberman person. He's a black Russian person with the dogs. I mean, find out who they are and network with those people as well. So that when something comes up, you can let them know. You would be surprised the effect, kind of like compound interest in banking. It'll either work against you if you owe a loan, or it'll work for you if you got a CD. If you know other dog people and those other dog people share your stuff, you start letting them know, guess what? More people call, more people show up at meetings. Life gets a lot simpler to get something done. And number 5, say thank you to those guys. When you have asked your elected official, whether it's your city, your state, or your federal, to help you with something, and they help you with something, say thank you. Those guys, they're not doing it for the money, heavens knows, because most of them aren't getting paid much. They're not doing it for the glory. Why? Because if an issue is controversial, 50% or 49% of people aren't going to be happy with whatever way you voted. But just say thanks. They gave you their time, and time is the most critical thing that any of us have. And they cared enough to help you out. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And when they cared enough to do whatever you wanted them to do, amend whatever, just say thanks. And especially because when they're listening, and especially if they modify, change, or drop stuff. Some of them will not have done the homework, some of them will have done the homework, but you probably have to change a few opinions. You gotta get the neutrals to being positive on your side. You gotta get the negatives to being hopefully neutral. But that's how you do it. Saying thank you is incredibly important. Not for this one, because they just did whatever you want them to do. It's for the future. You need them to realize that if they help you again, they're gonna get thanked again. And we're all people. We like to do what people like us to do, and then we'll get recognized for it. So, if you are a state club or a national club, if you are a member of the Black Russian National Club Association, or the Shih Tzus Owners of America, or whatever they are, form a legislative committee. Try and get everybody from each one of the clubs locally to have a legislative person. It's a little tougher than it sounds, but start the process. Get them working, get them organized, and review your AKC alerts daily. Forward them to the affected members of the state that you happen to be on. Know who your governmental AKC rep is in your area. I love Jacob. I call Jacob and go, Jacob. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that Collie Club of America, they did an excellent job about sending out legislative updates in terms of which state and what it is. And so much so, sometimes I don't even go to the AKC website because they do such.
But you know they're going to do it. Yeah.
Yes, but I just wanted to point out, there are some clubs that you could benchmark from as they do it.
Here's how
I
you
think
do
the
it.
DPCA is that way as well. I will say that I think they do it as well or better than just about any other parent club as far as what we're talking about here.
We try, but every week, every month, I shake my head and think, wow, we're still just scratching the surface. And I mean, some of the issues that are out there, you just shake your head and wonder, how in the world could that happen? And you have to realize what's an issue to one parent club isn't going to be an issue to another, but there are some issues that will affect us all, the mandatory stay and neuter. You know, the DPCA, obviously, we're concerned about crop and dog. You know, there's a reason why Doberman Pinscher people want that. And if you look, it's been banned in 81 countries across the world. You want to see a breed whose numbers drastically drop in the tank. It's once that happens, that's what happens to the Dobermans in that area. It's a study that I'm working on now, and it's really interesting to see. But yeah, just do the best you can do and start. Know who your rep is, and don't be afraid to email them. I mean, Jacob's busy, he's all over the place, he's got states he's after. I just send him emails. He'll get back with me. Very rarely am I sending him something at 9:15 in the morning that I gotta know the answer to at 9:17. Let him know, here's what I think. He'll get back with me when he can, and life's pretty good. Because if you don't tell them about the local issues, do you think anybody else is gonna tell them? No. The only way that they're gonna have their eyes and ears is if you are their eyes and ears.
Better to hear it twice than not at all.
Better to hear it twice than not at all. And then, like I say, work in concert. Once you've passed it on to them, they will tell you if that's an issue that they need to work on. And don't try and create it. There's, what, 11 people in the department? They got 11 people. You know, we got volunteer group of 9 at our place, and everybody has their own thing and their own dogs and their own jobs and everything else. This is what the AKC people do. They know the ins and outs, they know how to get it done, and they know what issues have come up and how they can effectively work on them. So use them and don't try and recreate whatever it is that they've done. Now, unless I miss my guess, I'm probably, what, about 5 minutes away?
Ish. You're good.
Am I good?
Yeah,
you're perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Questions? I mean, Leos are where the rubber hits the road. Because frequently it's not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing or anything like that. It's just that we gotta solve a problem. The water tower needs fixing. And in Oklahoma, it's always water issues, it's road issues, it's sewer issues, it's things like that. And part of that is the way our structure is. It will always be that way in Oklahoma because it's the only state in the nation where none of the property taxes ever go to the city. We have 6,000 some odd homes in the city. Not a single dime ever goes to the city. The only way that the cities in Oklahoma make their money is water sales, sewer sales. Guess what another one is? Tickets for police. You know, things like that. So it's a tough issue. And then you wonder why you don't have perfect roads. So if a dog issue comes up, they might be a lot more concerned about whether or not they have quality water than they are whatever the dog issue is, but you can't let it pass up. If you let it pass up, it's gonna get passed and you're gonna live with the consequences. Be there ahead of time and be there to help them out. And I see Jennifer waiting.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna point out, in case, I'm hoping you all picked it up on the way in, but there are copies of this presentation. If you did not get one, there are a couple extras out on the table out there. And in your folders as well, there is an article in there that Jacob and a couple of our other analysts put together that sum up for costs, things you can do on the local level as well, that go right along with this presentation. So make sure you take that with you too.
He's also talking about tree boards and all kinds of boards. A lot of local municipalities now also have animal welfare advisory boards or shelter advisory boards. So I would assume the majority of people in this room, that would be one of the boards that would be most
Interesting to them.
Yes, most relevant.
Another board to watch is your county zoning board.
Yes.
And that can impose certain difficulties on with activities for dog clubs, owners, and breeding.
Yeah, you gotta watch your city and you gotta watch your county. Because your county, a lot of times, is where your animal shelters are. It can be at the city, but a lot of times it's at the county. Yeah, Charlie.
It's some of the games now that we're starting to see is, and Sheila could back me up on this, is at the state level trying to get an advisory committee that is completely stocked by HSUS and ASPCA. And we've been fortunate to get a earmarked position in many locations that's for AKC, no one else. I mean, there's other people, but they want to stock it. They want to be there at the State House and the legislature, and they're the state advisory board, so you should listen to us. And you know what that means.
Yep.
I think on the other end of that too, like in Texas, for example, you know, there's very little breeder representation on the licensed breeder advisory committee. It's mostly made up of individuals that oppose dog breeding, and so they make recommendations for regulations, and the deck is stacked against dog breeders in that case, and so be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, and make no bones that regulations, especially at the federal level, they have the effect of law.
Right.
They just didn't get voted on many of them. Okay, what did we see? We obviously had a problem with getting dogs being able to be transferred out of Canada into the United States. Okay, well, now they made the provision, but that was a regulation. That wasn't a law. It didn't get voted on. And they're working on trying to change some of that. But that has significantly affected some people I know that are breeds that crop and dog. Because a
CDC.
lot of those are into the, a lot of those people would come from Canada down in the United States to crop and dock. And now they can't do that.
And that's a really good important point, because a lot of states, federal too, is, you've got the law, so you got, federal regulation is code of federal regulation. Iowa is Iowa code. Below it, they have the different departments. Department of Agriculture has its rules. And those are, again, to your point, those were voted on, those were imposed by that department.
Yeah. And I think the one, wasn't it CDC?
Yes.
Yeah. It was CDC, well-meaning. What they're trying to do is they're trying to stop the flow of dogs coming in that
Have rabies.
have rabies,
Which has been a problem.
which has
For
been a
their
problem.
shelter.
A real big problem.
Yeah, so I get it.
It's not just rabies, it's.
Yeah.
A lot of zoonotic-based diseases and
Yeah,
viruses.
that was the primary one though, number-wise.
Yeah, and those actually made it into homes. So from
Oh
overseas.
yeah, there were some horror stories.
Yeah, and Kansas was one of the states.
Wasn't it in Nebraska that they had an outbreak of, I can't remember, diphtheria, and they had to kill the dogs within the county, and they also had to bring all the other dogs back that they adopted to be quarantined for like 6 months to make sure they did not have it.
Yeah.
The legislation, Healthy Dog Importation Act, would address that. Healthy Dog Importation Act was attached to the federal farm bill. If we have time, we'll talk a little bit about this later. But what the CDC did was, we were very pleased with Healthy Dog Importation Act because it provided sufficient authority to the Secretary of Agriculture to make regulations, but it provided sufficient authority to the Secretary of Agriculture to look not only at rabies, but at a wide variety of
Yep,
zoonotic
amazing.
diseases, coming into the US, parasites, etc., and carriers, vectors. CDC came along and decided to sort of shortcut this whole process, and after a very abbreviated public comment period, just cut off all imports until the age of 6 months. Healthy Dog Importation Act would not have done that, would have been a much more nuanced approach. CDC just said, oh, nobody's importing anything into 6 months of age, and to the point, you're bringing in a dog, so you're bringing in, I'm gonna guess this is like, you're bringing in a Doberman from a country where you cannot crop dog, maybe just say Germany.
Yeah. There's,
What do you do, right? Now
They don't.
it's 6 months old,
right, they
it's
don't.
too late.
They
It's a
don't.
problem.
Yeah, they don't. You can't do it at that age.
Right.
You know, you have to do it at a much younger age, and so
Only 2 days after birth.
it's very interesting to visit with other countries about what's happened with not just our particular breed, but other breeds as some of these regulations, because some of them, the intended or unintended consequence, I'm not sure which one it was to basically decimate that particular breed in that area. Well, the problem that produces is the genetic bottleneck is horrible. When you start looking at eliminating a large section of a particular population, then what's left to breed has probably a lot closer breeding on an inbreeding coefficient than you probably really want. I mean, I watch that very, very closely. Because our dogs are tremendous dogs, but I wanna make sure that, you know, most of the bad things in canines happen because two bad things match up. You know, you get enough diversity, they call it hybrid diversity, your dogs probably will have more puppies, better litters, and be stronger in terms of their genetics. But anyways, thank you for your time. You guys got any other questions?
So Indian nations, what is it? Any problems for you?
It's Oklahoma. Oh, yeah, the Gert case?
Say again?
Oklahoma was originally intended to be 2 states. The state of Sequoia, which ran from northeast down to southwest, and the state of Oklahoma, which ran the opposite triangle. At the time when Oklahoma was trying to be a state, which was 1907, the then President of the United States said, no, I think those are all going to be a particular, I don't remember whether it was Democrat or Republican or whatever it was. I'm not going to give those guys 4 senators, you guys need to join together. And so a third of the state which we happen to sit in Choctaw territory, so. Anumba Karamosi Isha Mishakachi Ayopanchali. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words to you today.
Cherokee?
Choctaw. Choctaw. But,
The fact
so
that
our,
oil in Oklahoma on Indian territory didn't help either.
follow the money.
Yep.
I promise you, 80% of the time you follow the money. But our state club is called the Doberman Country Club of the Indian Nations. And so, yeah, we try and do the best we can do. Yeah, it was originally gonna be 2 states. And they only wanted to have 2 senators, and that's why if you look at the state seal of Oklahoma, there's a cowboy on one side of it, and there's an Indian princess on the other, and they even had a ceremonial marrying of those 2 in 1907 when they formed statehood. Got a little education on Oklahoma at the same time. Okay, thank you very, very much. I appreciate the AKC guys letting me do this.